What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another Too Good for Theaters video. Today we're going to be breaking down another draft prospect here, that being wide receiver out of Washington State, Kyle Williams, and why I think he'd be a good fit for the Patriots. So let's get right into it. So talking about Kyle Williams here, he is 22 years old. He's around 6 foot, 186 pounds. He spent 5 seasons playing NCAA football, 3 at the University of Las Vegas, Nevada, and 2 most recently at Washington State. And I would sum up Kyle Williams just by playmaker. You simply just want to put the ball in his hands. And he's a little bit different of a archetype wide receiver compared to the previous 2 wide receivers we've talked about, that being Trey Harris and Jaden Higgins. He's not really that boundary type guy, even though you can put him on the boundary. I would say he's just more so an explosive playmaker compared to those 2, where they're more so your boundary players. This is a guy who can kind of play all over the offense in my eyes. And he's probably the second best wide receiver in terms of yak yardage in this year's draft class, only behind a guy like Travis Hunter. So if you're anywhere near Travis Hunter in that specific category, it shows that you're a true playmaker. And that's certainly something that Kyle Williams is, as I've said before. I will say Kyle Williams probably does lack the ideal size and strength to play at the NFL level right now. So that's certainly something that he's going to have to overcome. And I wouldn't necessarily say that the Patriots need this position fully filled. You have guys like Demario Douglas kind of to fill that role as being a playmaker. And, of course, you just add Stephon Diggs. But it certainly does not help to have more depth at that wide receiver position. And Kyle Williams really is kind of a guy who can balance deep ball targets and underneath targets with and just getting the ball in their hands because of how explosive they are. And from what I've seen, Kyle Williams is a very crisp route runner. He uses his shiftiness and his speed to get open pretty well. He does a real nice job of kind of dislodging defenders' hips and kind of manipulating defenders' eyes while using his lower half and really getting open. And this was something that he really did thrive with, being able to identify zone coverage and kind of just stopping in these gaps to give the quarterbacks some pretty easy targeted throws to really connect upon. And what I will say that his contested catch rate did improve upon in college every season. However, I wouldn't certainly say that his ideal attribute, especially not on the boundaries. He's not going to be a guy where you're throwing up jump ball twos like Trey Harris or Jaden Higgins is. He's going to be more so that guy where he's going to get his contested catches on tough catches across the middle, maybe with a safety and a linebacker draping on him, as well as a corner where he's going to make some tough contested catches across the middle in terms of his contested catch rate there. And really, I think that there's a lot of positives here with Kyle Williams. I just think that the Patriots kind of have this area filled out a little bit. But like I said before, the more depth you have at this position, the better. And Kyle Williams is a very explosive playmaker. So anytime you get a chance to really add a player of his type of levels of explosiveness, you certainly have to do so, especially in the later rounds. And really my only big subjection here with Kyle Williams is they might have that role kind of filled out already with a guy like Pop Douglas, who especially in Josh McDaniels' system, very reminiscent of that true slot receiver who can make some big-time plays for you. So that would be the only place I'm reluctant to add Kyle Williams, maybe because you kind of have that architect right type role kind of filled in your room already. But like I said before, I think the benefits certainly outweigh the risk here. And I think that Kyle Williams would certainly be a guy that I would not be opposed to Patriots taking. I kind of comped him to a guy like Elijah Moore, where you really just kind of want to put the ball in his hands and let his athleticism go to work. I mean, very quick, 4.4 40 time here and a 10-yard sprint time of 1.55. So Kyle Williams, one of the quicker wide receivers in this draft class here. And whether his vertical is not the greatest, like I said before, 36.5 inches there, that's really not going to be his role. So I foresee Kyle Williams probably going anywhere from the 3rd round to the 4th round, maybe even the 5th round if he were to fall that far. But anytime you want to take a flyer on an explosive playmaker like Kyle Williams, I think it's certainly justified to take him in any of those rounds here. Maybe going up a little bit more might be reaching a little bit, especially given the fact that there might be some more talented wide receivers in areas that you don't necessarily have in your wide receiver room, that being a boundary type player. But Kyle Williams would certainly not be a bad pick whatsoever for the Patriots. So taking a look at Kyle Williams' college production here, in the 2024 campaign, he played in a total of 13 games.
He had an offensive grade of 79.9, a receiving grade of 82.1, and a run block grade of 54.1. Of course, all these grades are provided by PFF. He was targeted 101 times and came down with 70 receptions for a reception rate of 69.3%. He practically had 1,200 yards, actually having 1,196 yards on the season. He averaged around 17.1 yards per reception, came up with 14 touchdowns. He had a contested catch rate of 62.5%, that being 10 out of 16 chances. He had 5 drops for a drop rate of 6.7%. That's something you would like to see fall just a little bit here. Like I said before, one of the best yak wide receivers in this year's class, averaged around 8.4 yards after the catch per reception. He averaged around 2.7 yards per route run and had an average depth of target around 11.5 yards. And he did have himself a fumble on the year. And take a look at some of his key games here. Against Washington, he was targeted 8 times, came up with 3 receptions for around a reception rate of 37.5%, 22 yards there. So not the biggest game against some tough competition in that Washington defense. However, he had a much better game, I believe, in the bowl game against Syracuse, where he was targeted 15 times, came down with 10 receptions for 172 yards and a touchdown. And take a look at where he was really snapped, or really where he took his snaps by alignment. He was more so used as a wideout in the Washington State offense, where he took 582 wide snaps compared to only 186 slot snaps. However, I feel like his versatility and more so his prototype can certainly fit in the slot, and really just anywhere you can get the ball in his hands, he's going to be best fit for any NFL team that chooses to draft him. All right, everyone, that's going to wrap up this video about Kyle Williams. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think we already have this role fit, or do you think we should just take Kyle Williams regardless of who's in the room? But let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you all in the next one.